Okay, you're alive.
On introverts. She's committed to supporting individuals and organizations harness introvert power. She's written groundbreaking books, The Introverted Leader, now in its second edition, Quiet Influence, The Genius of Opposites, and of course her newest work, which is Creating Introvert-Friendly Workspaces. And those books have been translated into 17 languages. Jennifer's delivered speeches at such organizations as Merck and NASA, Bosch, the American Chemical Society, TEDx, and the U.S. Embassy in Vietnam, and has been featured in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. She received her PhD in counseling and organizational development from Florida State University and her degrees in sociology and counseling from Washington University at St. Louis. She is a certified speaking professional, which is a designation held by a small percentage of professional speakers in the NSA, the National Speakers Association. She has served as president-elect of the National Speakers Association of Georgia. She's involved in mentoring and community service. She, like me, is a native New Yorker. She calls Atlanta, Georgia home. Welcome, Jennifer. Very excited that you're here. Take it away.
Lisa, thank you so much. It is really a pleasure to have you helming or heading up these seminars, these webinars. I know Emily Axelrod hit you up, and I'm glad she did. And Lisa didn't mention too, you have a book that is coming out, when is that? In a few months, right? Or it's—
No, it's coming out in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, 2 weeks. So this is appropriate. So thank you for this. And Christelle always being in the background, but so important in terms of making this all happen. So thanks to everybody. You know, I'm really proud to be partnered with BK. I've been a member of the BK Authors Co-op and involved over the years and for over a decade. And, you know, writing and promoting my books has really built my business in a lot of ways that I never could have imagined. It's carved out my brand, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And as Lisa said, I would love to hear your questions, because once I got into this and started preparing, I realized, you know, it's like peeling an onion. You just can't, there's a lot there. So I want to make sure this is helpful to you with your questions. So I want to share some of my lessons and experience. And while it won't mirror probably exactly your niche or the focus that you have with your book, you know, I hope you can certainly take a few ideas and make them your own. So we are going to take a leap here. We have a couple of polls. So we're going to try that out. And Christelle has offered to run the first poll. It's a very quick question that we have for you. So for Christelle, if we could get that first poll up there just to see who we have in the room, so to speak. And the question is, I believe my book is in sync with my brand. And now some of you who are on the phone obviously can't answer this. If you want to put your answers in the chat, or, you know, I think you might have that on your phone. You might even have this on your phone. Yeah. So we're going to run that for just a moment to see what comes up. Because really, you know, the key thing is you definitely want your book to be correlated with whatever your brand is. And if it's an outlier, I had a book years ago that was like that. The book didn't do very well. I wasn't very excited about the book, and it kind of died a nice, I shouldn't say nice, but, you know, RIP to the book. It didn't go very far. So I want to just see how you see your book in sync with your brand. And what we've got here, I'm not sure what the numbers are, how many people responded, but it looks like the large majority of you, 75%, strongly agree, and moderately agree, less than 20%. A few of you, 8%, say agree. So you're in the right direction, and I'm not really surprised with this, because when we work with BK, that is a message, if most of you are involved with Vericolar, that's a message that I know that Steve and the whole leadership team and the editorial staff is very focused on, is making sure that your book connects to the work that you're doing. And it's not just a nice to have, it helps sell books, it helps the Vericolar, and it also helps us. So let me just start with a little brief history. You can see that it doesn't take rocket science to know that my passion and my lane, if you will, is supporting introverts and moving into that space now of how do we change cultures really to support people that are quieter and think within and have different strengths and skills. But, you know, it's all started back probably about 15 years ago when I was teaching a week-long leadership training class of engineers, and this quiet young man, Sean, wasn't saying very much. And I approached him just to see how the class was going for him. And he hesitated, and he said, oh, it's okay. You know, I'm learning some things. He said, but it really is not going to mean a lot, Jennifer, because, you know, I can never be a manager at my company. You know, people talk loudly. They move really fast. It's not me. And I just don't see any opportunities. So of course I gave him my Jennifer pep talk, talked about Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, et cetera, and, how there was a future for him, but I could see that he wasn't swayed or he wasn't influenced. So what happened was I left that class and I didn't really know what happened to Sean, if he stayed in the company and learned to find a place for himself, or people accepted him and appreciated him, or if he left and went somewhere else. But it was really the moment that I realized, just that one experience and then others on top of that, workplaces need to support all kinds of temperaments. And when we don't do this, we risk losing talent and innovation and performance. And that's really what I would say with the point at which you might say it's conception. It was when my brand actually was born. It kind of all came together for me in that moment. So what I want to talk about as you think about your own brand, are some considerations. And then I want to go through some tactics to hand to you so that when you leave, you have some actions you can take. So of course, as we know in writing a book, that's the first step. We hear the statistics about the hundreds of thousands of books that come out every year. So it really is about the definition of your brand. And, I was looking up what is a brand. If you look up on Google and you see, it's umpteen infinite pages saying that. But, what I took from that was a brand is really a name, a term, a design, a symbol, or any other feature that identifies what you're selling or your service as distinct from other sellers. And I want to just emphasize that, as distinct from other sellers. And another definition that I liked of brand that I came across recently, it's the personality of a business. So think about that. What are you projecting? What is your personality that you are putting out there that you want people to know and to embrace and to understand? So consider these 5 points. And I don't have slides on these, but I'm going to put these in a handout that I'll make available. So the first point that I want you to think about with your brand is your book should be intertwined with your business, and one supports the other. It is synergistic. So like, for instance, in the keynotes that I do, one of my key services and my income generators is speaking, and that's expanding to other areas now, which I can talk about. But with each of my speeches, I've been very consistent about using the name of my book as my speech name. So I don't offer a lot of speeches. I just give what you'll see there, 3. There'll be a 4th keynote coming with the new one. But I will change the subtitle, to make it so if it's for, IT people, I'll change it and say, building on your quiet strength as an IT professional. That'll be the subtitle. But the main title is always consistent with my book. And I do that for a number of reasons. And one of them is because I oftentimes, and I know we're oftentimes encouraged to do this, is to bundle my book with my work. So I'm always looking for opportunities to do that. Now, the main thing, and I think this is probably one of the most important points, is to don't be afraid of picking a lane and going narrow. And I'm glad to see in the poll that a lot of you do see your business aligned. So you've already sort of picked your lane, because what it does, I know a lot of us are resistant to do that. To say, when I went from leadership and communication to introverted leaders, I'm like, oh, I'm going to lose all this business. But it's very counterintuitive. You actually, in my experience, get more business. And why is that? Because people are looking for something new and something different. When I would query them, why did you select me for this training program or this consulting gig? They said, we want to learn about this. Is different than all the other leadership work that we've done. So going narrow actually gives you more opportunities. And then the other sort of counterintuitive thing that I discovered along the way was, all of those, as Steve Jobs says, you connect the dots, right? All of those experiences that I had as a career coach, as a counselor, as an HR pro, all of that comes into play because you're able to go deeper in these organizations. You're able to answer more questions. You're able to extend your work. My workplace, my focus is on organizations in the workplace, but for those of you who are in different areas, you're able to pull from your experience and your history. It's sort of like you lead with your topic and then it goes from there. The third thing, so don't be afraid of picking a lane. And then I think another thing that Barrett Kohler does really well that kind of positions us for success, and they didn't pay me to say this at all, but they do tell us that we need to challenge assumptions. And many of us have gone through You know, and Jake, you were just saying you've gone through several versions, and yay to Jake, you got your proposal accepted. But we challenge assumptions. And so we come out of the gate, you know, saying things that not everybody is saying. Like, you know, you don't have to be loud to influence, or introverts can be leaders. I'm just using some examples from mine. Or actually, introverts and extroverts are opposites, but they can really find a way to exponentially succeed. So all the things that sort of are common myths, you're sort of challenging. And again, that is helping you define your brand. So I want you to think about that. What is the counterintuitive myth that you've been writing about, that you've been talking about, that you've been challenging, that can make you stand out? You also, one thing very tactically is you can charge more when you have a book. And a lot of my colleagues don't realize this. You know, we're in it to help. We want to make a difference. But you can, I remember Sharon Jordan Evans, when I was first querying her about her speaking business. She's one of our most successful authors with Bev K. You know, she talked about, yes, Jennifer, you should raise your speaking fees because you have a good book. And so I want you to think about that. Are you undercharging because you, even though you have the book? Because the perception out there, you are an expert. You don't have to sell yourself as an expert as you did before your book. And you've studied the topic and you have credibility. I remember at the beginning, I was trying to prove, like I used to why I should get the gig. And they're like, no, we looked at your video, we got a copy of your book. That's, you know, why are you overselling is really what the message was, you know? So number 4, you can, I said you can often charge. And number 5, this is something interesting. I get a lot of angst from some young people and folks who are getting into the world that I'm in. And they say, I don't have my brand yet. I don't have my niche. I don't have my lane. Well, you know, you don't want to hire some expensive branding company, not that they can't be helpful, to help you develop your brand. You have to get out there and create momentum and go a little all over the place and start speaking and coaching and consulting and writing, whatever your service is, whatever your talent is. And what's going to happen, once you start selling, your brand will solidify. And I saw a good example of this with consumer products. You know, Coke didn't necessarily wait to create their branding message. They sold Coca-Cola first. You know, so using it with that kind of analogy, it might be useful. So, you know, don't overthink your brand. It's going to emerge. And remember, you have the book as really an ace in the hole to help you with that. So I'm sure, you know, we'll get some questions on this. I'm happy to answer.
So right Jennifer, now, one that yes. came in, one question that came in is, can you just recap those 5 points? Just go 1 through 5 again so folks can catch that.
That's why I should do a slide next time, right? But next, you know, live and learn. So the first one was your book should be intertwined with your business. One supports the other. The second one is don't be afraid of going narrow, of picking a lane. The third is what distinguishes you is that you challenge assumptions. So build on that. Build on the challenging messages that you have. And number 4, charge more. You have credibility from your book. And number 5, your brand will emerge. Get the gigs first and then worry about the actual brand or what your message is on your, you know, on your marketing materials. Does that help, Lisa? I hope I didn't go too fast, but, and also, as I said, I'm going to do a handout on this.
That's great.
Okay, well, thank you for asking me to do that. Okay, so I did create for the purpose of this talk, and I think it really helped me to organize my thinking on this, is, you know, let's get into some tactics here. But before we do, I do have another poll that we've created. Christelle, if we could pull up that poll number 2, and let's just see where people are with this question. And I can read it out loud for those of you who don't have access. So this is the most effective strategy in building your community of fans. The first one is sending out a regular newsletter, speaking gigs, media placement, social media, a website that highlights your book and services, and all of the above. So let's see what people say on that one. As the results come in. I'll be curious on this one, Lisa, what happens?
Well, as we're waiting for the results to come in, Jessie made a really interesting point. She said, absolutely true that your brand emerges and becomes more clear to you the more you write and speak about it. As I got clarity, I decided to put a stake in the ground and ended up changing the name of my business. Thanks for that, Jessie.
Oh, Jessie, thank you so much for that. And Jessie's somebody I was going to use an example for in just a moment. And we're going to come back to her because, you know, she's done a lot of things right. So this is what we got. You guys are smart cookies. There's no reason that's not a surprise to me. 73% of you said all of the above. And it's interesting, not one person said sending out a regular newsletter, because it's all of these things. Exactly. It's all of these strategies, or you might call them tactics, that work together to make it happen. And I will just put it aside here because I work with introverts who, and a lot of introverts say they don't like to sell. A lot of these approaches are very aligned with the introvert sensibility of thinking through things before jumping in and being helter-skelter. So I just want to say that at the outset. So thank you. You guys got that one right. It is all of these things. So let's start with the first lever here, lever or lever, and that is your website. I'm just going to say some kind of things that came to mind as I reflected on what I did that was successful. And by the way, I've had a lot of mistakes too and put a lot of money down the drain. So I'm happy to talk about that if anybody wants that. But these are some of the things that have worked. Make your website clear. Doesn't have to be too crowded. Even if you don't want to create a new website, make sure you have a landing page for the book, right? So the book is getting some attention. Use your website. I learned this over the years. Any time you can get a name and a contact, you're building your list. And you've heard BK talk about this a lot. In fact, they choose people now a lot through the list that they've developed, their platform. So I have a quiz on my website. If you go to jenniferkahnweiler.com, you'll see we have several quizzes. Each of those quizzes collects the name and email of people. And then we send them a newsletter, and then they can always opt out if they want. SEO could be a rabbit hole, you know, search engine optimization. But I have found that, you know, in selectively paying for it once in a while, kind of taking a look and making sure that my words are sort of attracting the kind of people I want to see my website. It's not a bad idea, but I wouldn't get hung up on it because analytics, or the algorithms, as they say, change all the time. So I think what the goal is now with websites, from what I understand, is you want people to spend some time there. And how do you get them to spend time there? You know, if you're a speaker, you should have a video. Even if you're not a speaker, you should have a video, maybe of talking about your book or interviews as you go along. They don't have to be perfect, by the way. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on website. I'm not a website expert, but I'm happy to share with you my experience. The last thing I'll say about it is I've been told by my website gurus that you should probably update your website every 4 or 5 years, because websites change and people do go there to check you out. Okay, so that's about websites. The next part of the wheel is your communities. So what I want to say about that is that's probably, if I was going to rank anything, and those people that know me on the call, I'm all about collaboration and partnership, and the pie is big enough. Some of you have heard of Susan Cain, who wrote the book Quiet. And I had one of my author colleagues was at a workshop with me. We at the author workshop several years, it was a number of years ago, when her book came out, Quiet, right after my book had come out. And it was all the rage. And of course, you know, she has one of the most watched TED Talks, et cetera. And he said to me, Jennifer, aren't you jealous? So I was, you know, that word didn't really resonate with me, but at the same time, I had a day of, you know, being a little jealous. Okay, let me be honest. But I don't stay in jealousy, maybe because, you know, it's a gender thing. I don't know. I'm not going to go there now. But I resonate with the idea of a term called collaborative competition. And that is, Catherine Mayer wrote a book about how women compete. And I really resonated with that because it's about competition, but it's being better than you are, like raising your game, because there's other people out there who are doing great work. Susan Cain, in the end, has done the most for my brand that I could ever imagine. She has endorsed my book twice. She's put all my book chapters on her site. I just found out she's endorsing the new book, which was really a really great thing. But it's not just the endorsements. I share her stuff all the time because I am excited that we now have an introvert revolution. Partly, yeah, sure, it's me and a lot of other people, but Susan Cain really opened the door for the world to know about this. So why would I stay in jealousy? So it's all about how do we help each other? How do we pass along sales? That's another thing you'll hear at BK a lot. I remember Steve talked to me about pass along sales. I didn't really get it. And then I would hear from coaches who would say to me, oh, I told my clients about your book, or I gave it to them. And, and that started me thinking about that's a kind of an untapped audience for my brand. Let me try to explore maybe talking to some of the coaching groups and things like that. So, think about that. It's not just your book. Who are the communities who you can connect with, colleagues and friends? Mention them in your book. The third area is in terms of community. We could say probably a lot more about that, but I just want to introduce it. Actually, before I get to media, I'm going to go back and say one thing about this. This was suggested to me by a couple of people to involve folks in your writing journey. So for those of you who are still writing your book or thinking about your next book, when I had my last book, I didn't have any, when I started it, I didn't really have much data. There wasn't any data there on introvert-friendly organizations. So I did a survey. I got 240 responses. Now I use my list. Those people are part of my journey. So I kept those people involved. I'm talking to them about the book launch. I do surveys with my community. So they kind of come along with me with the book. One cool suggestion I heard recently, if you're on Instagram, take a picture of the proofs when they come in and say, and show what's happening, not when the book's finished, but how it gets there. People love to go behind the scenes. Take them with you behind the scenes. We did a t-shirt contest. I got a lot of people involved in my books then. We had a t-shirt for introverts that I used to give out, and I still do occasionally. Please don't, I forgot what it is. Oh, you read this t-shirt, that's enough social interaction for one day. So we needed one for extroverts. I'll let that one land there. So I did a contest, and we got a great a phrase that we use all the time from the community. We gave them a prize. Think about things to do. Please don't talk while I'm interrupting. That was their answer. So you want people to sell your books for you, and your readers respond to their posts. People have taught me that, no matter who it is, say something. I know Jessie Stoner did that all the time. She responded to and you still do, Jessie, I'm sure, every comment on your blog, because those people matter, and they stay part of your, the new term is, I hate to use it, but everyone is, ecosystem. So stay on their radar. The newsletters, we had 0% being the main thing. Yeah, you got to stay. I go back and forth with that. But you know what? I'll get work from that. It reminds people, even once a month, just doing a short one. You stay in touch with people, not so much bragging about what you're doing, but just updates, maybe something you've learned, that kind of thing. There is one constituency that we as BK authors forget about, and that is the BK staff. I was very surprised with my first book that there was so much appreciation from the editorial team, from the marketing team, when I would just forward them, let's say, a piece that I was quoted in. And I started to realize that was really helping them sell books, but it was also helping me because it was just a win-win, to share the wealth. And so what they would do is share on social media, they would share it with their distributors. And I still do that. And I understand from BK, and they can tell us, if this is wrong, that most authors don't do that we forget, right, to include them as one of our communities. It also helps the foreign rights people a lot. They'll use all of those press clippings, or if, let's say, you're speaking somewhere, you want them to know it, they'll use that to get you foreign rights. So there's no accident that I got, all these languages. I think it's because we've been very much in touch. If you're traveling somewhere, let them know. They will arrange speaking engagements for you. We had a great time in Germany a few years ago. They did a whole opening with the German publisher. That was all with BK's support and connection. So really make them. They are part of our community. Let's not forget them. Media. Okay, so media is the third spoke on the wheel here. And so, media keeps changing. I'll have to admit, I've always been sort of a frustrated journalist. That was what I wanted to be. I wanted to be Brenda Starr when I was young, sort of run around. Some people are probably too young for that, but she had these dashing adventures. She had red hair, and she was just this great woman who got into all kinds of investigative reporting. Well, I actually am doing some of that with my writing, but what I'm finding now is with the press is that, the press has changed, and we all know that on the global scale, but you have to write your own articles now. I mean, they used to interview you, they do that some now, but they'll ask some questions. If you get back to them quickly, you're usually golden. If you give them more than they need, they love that, and they'll come back to you. I always share reporters' articles because that's how they get their work, is to be visible. Reporters are still on Twitter. So even though Twitter is sort of dying, people say, you can follow your favorite media people in your brand. Going back to your brand, who writes about introverts? I follow people in workplaces, that kind of thing. The other emerging, and it's already emerged, piece of media that is being utilized by a lot of authors successfully is podcasts. And I don't encourage you to go out and start your own podcast. It takes a lot of work and a lot of consistency. I'm not saying don't do it. If you're really into it, do it. But I want to just cite Jennifer Brown, who I met a few months ago. Jennifer Brown is a BK author, wrote The Inclusive Leader, a fabulous book. She told me that she had reached out to 100 podcasts. She's been on tons of them. And that's a great way to sell your message. And it's a relaxed way. Those of you who don't want to do keynote speaking, it's so much more relaxing. You get so much information, and you can out there and you can share. So I love podcasts, and BK can help you, guide you in that. Let me know if there's any other questions that come in on this one too.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Or any of the topics.
So there is one on the media thing, which is a question about how do you get those media placements to begin with? Any suggestions?
Well, I think in the beginning, if you don't really have your network, you have to be very proactive and follow the reporters, essay, who are covering what you're doing. And the places that are, most of them are online now. So let's say you've got your, and by the way, I do Google alerts. I don't know if people do that on your topic. So I get, you can set them for, daily. I usually do them weekly. And I'll get all of the articles that have been written about introverts, let's say for the week, and I'll see who's writing them. So one of the places, for instance, is Thrive Global. That's Arianna Huffington's. She covers that topic a lot. She has certain people that write about it. So if I was trying to reach that person, I would just reach out to them and tell them how much I like the article. I would share it. I would tell them, your response to it, and offer to be a source. You don't necessarily have to pay for PR help. I've never found that to be as effective as it could be, but I'm going to talk about services in just a moment. There are some ways to use it. So hopefully that helps, Lisa, as far as, being proactive, I think has been for me the best. And as I mentioned, reinforce the hell out of reporters, because they don't get the love either. They really appreciate when you share their stuff. And I use LinkedIn a lot to connect with them. And I will just reach out to them directly and find a way and be persistent. Now, don't just reach out once, and share their stuff. I mean, we forget that. We need to share people's things. That really comes back to help you, because you believe in it too. You like their work and you want it to get out in the world. So it becomes, again, they're part of your community and they're collaborating with you. So then what happens is you gave them a great quote, they're going to come back to you. It's like they're so under pressure to meet deadlines. If you're a good source, they're going to come back. Now, I haven't had as much experience with TV, but I've done a lot of podcasts and print stuff.
That's great. Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, let's talk about one area that a lot of people dread. That is social media. When I was studying how introverts influence, I found that they use social media a very thoughtful way. And I think that's how we all need to use it, to have a purpose. So where do your communities live? You shouldn't try to be everywhere, in my opinion. So LinkedIn is where I focus my work. I hardly do Facebook. I do some of it, but, and I've been doing more on Instagram. Social media is such a moving target that it's good to find out what's happening with it, as just like with your website, things are dynamic. And what I do is, we'll talk about, outside firms, but I do actually invest in a quarterly consult with a social media expert from Weaving Influence. And she talks with me about what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. And I delegate some of it to my assistant, who's really gotten into it and loves to post. So that's good. And, but you don't want to be posting stuff that's not going to be seen. For instance, videos and graphics get seen, engaged with so much more than just regular posts. You know, so you don't know these things until you sort of start to talk to people who are following this on a daily basis. If you go to the BK Marketing Workshop, that's why I go every year, because it changes. These things change and you can keep up on it. So I highly recommend that workshop. It's high quality. This year is going to be fabulous. You have, for social media, use content you have from the book. Just put yourself on a calendar. That's been really helpful. We do a, sort of a posting calendar, so we're not inundating people, which it might feel like that to some of you. I apologize. But people see social media at different times, so you want to make sure that you're hitting different folks, and you don't want to always be posting the same kind of thing. So maybe I'll do, like I did a video on Facebook Live, and I shared that on different platforms, wrote a little bit about it with Johanna last week as an introverted leader. So you want to mix it up. And also, again, the same rule about sharing content from other people. And that's the part I keep trying to remember to do myself, to share postings. And you're going to increase your platform so much more if it's not just about you. It's just, we're not just focused on ourselves. For those of you who do like data, I think that Google, and I think we all should do this, and I've started to a little more, is to use Google Analytics to see how things are landing. You can see what people are looking at. Google Analytics is getting a little more friendly. I am going to, when I talked about sharing, I mentioned Jessie Stoner, and I wrote about Jessie in the Introverted Leader, because I think what you did, Jessie, as far as, sharing other people's posts, really ended up having it wasn't just a nice to have. Jessie got 100,000 followers on Twitter as a result, and her blog has gotten over 1 million views a year. So, and I really attribute it to Jessie's approach to being generous. So maybe we want to unmute, let Jessie just say a word or two about that, about your philosophy, if you don't mind being put on the spot.
Oh, Jennifer, first of all, it's a 500,000 views. Thank you for doubling the views.
Oh, okay. That. All right. Well,
but it's still, kind of amazing me. I'm trying to figure out who they all are. But I get a lot of engagement, and you're right. I get a lot of comments on my blog posts, which a lot of people don't. So
that's right.
It really is about the community and building the community. And my experience is the more I give, the more I get. And so I think before you ask something of somebody, you should give. I get requests from people all the time. Will I host a guest post for them, or will I, share their stuff? And they've never shared my stuff. And I'm going, why are you asking me for something?
Yeah.
You've never given me anything.
Mm-hmm.
So Twitter is my main source. I agree with you. You just can't be on all of them. And there's a community of people that are having conversations in the leadership field that feel relevant. And I have Feedly, and I have a feed where I pick up the posts like you. I'm looking for what's relevant in my field, and I'm also picking up posts of the people that I respect and admire. And then I use Deliver It. There's other services like Buffer and things like that to just automatically send things out. So I think there's a way of setting this up so it's automated and doesn't take so much of your time.
Deliver It. Okay, that one I need to look into.
Yeah, it's I'll put in, it's dlvr.it. It's $10 a month.
Great, Jessie. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's super. And if anybody else has questions or additions and suggestions on how to manage social media, because it can be a huge time suck, but we still need to be present. We still need to be visible, and it can help your brand. People always say, I see your name everywhere. Well, that's what you want. You want them to see. I mean, they might get annoyed. They can always hide you for a while, right? Lisa, were you going to say something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so just for those who can't see the chat box, Jessie did put that in. It's D like dog, L like Larry, V like Victor, R like Robert.it. That's the source for that. And then I just wanted to add a few things that came in the chat. Ed said, for media placements, writing articles and essays can be a good way to get in the articles. A number of business publications will take these contributed byline pieces. Ed was an editor at Workforce magazine, and he was always on the lookout for smart articles on HR topics. That's a great question as well. And Wendy was complimenting you, Jennifer, that you're such a role model. She loves the ideas and your encouragement.
Thank you.
This is really consistent with the ways that I know you. And there was a sort of a hallelujah from Jessie, who said she couldn't agree more about the importance of author relationships with BK staff. So those have come in as well.
Thank you. And I appreciate all of those. And Ed, Ed certainly has credibility as a journalist too. And thank you for reminding me of that, Ed, that we need to spend the time doing what I think they used to call them byliners, to have those at the ready with your book. And you have the content already in your book. You just need to maybe have a friend who's an editor like Maren. I'll run things by her to, Maren Shoke here, to take a look and maybe clean it up if you're not comfortable with, totally putting it out there without an editor's eye on it. BK will also help as well with that. So that's really, thank you for
and
that.
Ed chimed in and said book authors get extra cred when you do that. So that's good to know. Thanks, Ed.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. I just want to move into the last two, and then we can open it up with any other questions and comments, which have been, that's what we were hoping for. So the speaking is the one that's kind of my sweet spot. When I started developing my brand and writing my first book, I really also became very committed to becoming a professional speaker. And I realized not everybody is down that route, but it's fortuitous for me that, it does align very well with selling books and getting gigs. However, and I think speaking is really, really important. But I want to say why I think speaking is helpful, and it doesn't have to be keynote speaking either. So keep that in mind. When you're out there talking about your book, it's a feedback loop, because you put your baby out into the world. You don't really know, and Lisa, you're going to see this in a few days. You're not really sure how it's going to land and what the reaction is, and usually you're very pleasantly surprised, but in different ways than you might have expected. I thought my first book was going to be aimed at emerging leaders, and then I'm hearing from CIOs saying that they need the skills. So we're addressing that. So I started speaking to those groups. You don't know what's going to happen, but speaking is important to be able to do. The key is to be able to tell stories, and you've already written a lot of those in your book. So you can start with the good stories that resonate. The other points about speaking that I wanted to push, this is probably the most important thing now, is that you should think about, if you're not comfortable doing keynotes, then think about a Q&A. Bill and I just went to we go to book festivals, and last night there was a speaker who wrote, John Carreyrou wrote Bad Blood, somebody might have heard about. Well, he was interviewed by a wonderful interviewer, and we got just as much value than if he had just done a presentation. So I think about it, and more organizations and workplaces and professional associations, you've probably seen, are open to this type of format. It can also be a panel, propose that. So I've been doing more of that kind of work, and it's always, very rewarding and a good way to have, here's what happens. You get engagement and you get reactions and you get ideas. So each of my books that I've written has come from these audiences, not just my readers, but the people that I'm actually talking with live in these forums and discussions. You want to give your books away there. You want to record in those sessions so you have videos. Another thing and I know BK is promoting this now too, is book clubs. So you can facilitate a book club. Tiffany Janet talked to us about that at the retreat. One of the BK authors who's actually gave me the idea that you don't necessarily have to run the book club. You can create the questions, get them started, and then they're off and running in these workplaces. So that's another great way to do it. So I could talk about speaking forever, so maybe I'll do another follow-up with anybody who's interested. So, but I think it's definitely a thing to think about if you haven't put that into your plan. And then finally, I think we're on to the last part of the puzzle here, and that is the question that comes up about, all this stuff costs money. So when you're working with these outside firms, so how do we handle that as authors? And we don't have unlimited budgets. So Christelle, you have a poll there. I'd like to give the last poll now and see where people are on this question. If we could pull that one up. Yeah, there we go. You're on the ready here. I use the following approaches to vetting outside firms. because I'm sure all of us could tell stories of where our expectations haven't been met, or we had, things didn't work out the way we had hoped. And I'm not saying that happens all the time, but it's a big investment to put it in there. So let's see what people say here. The answers to the questions were, how do I vet? I ask other BK authors. I attend the BK marketing workshop to hear possible vendors. I ask for a sample of their work. I interview more than one provider. So let's see what people say on that one.
So Jennifer, there's a question on this poll that came in, which is outside firms for what? So specifically, what kind of outside firms offering what kinds of services?
Oh, okay. Firms to help you with your, maybe an editor, a website person, in the marketing realm, helping you with PR, right? With video, with speech coaching. There's all kinds of vendors that you can go to. And I've gone to all of them. And so these are all things to help you elevate your game, to really become more of even a better communicator about your message. I think that would be the key theme there. So let's see what we came up with here. So several people, was multiple choice. So we had ask other BK authors. A large majority of you said that, 3/4. Attend the BK marketing workshop. That's great. I love the asking for a sample of the work. About a half of you said that, and interview more than one provider. Excellent. So I think you guys are doing 3/4 said yes, you do that. So I think you guys hit the main points there. One that I do want to recommend, and we forget about, is there's websites like Upwork, where you can, if you need some marketing materials, and you want to ask people to give you some samples and then choose one. It's usually a lot cheaper than some of the other places. One thing that I learned, and I have worked with a number of PR firms and social media firms, is that you can contract for their services a la carte. Usually they'll come back with a proposal and that's pretty comprehensive, that covers a lot. So I say, well, maybe I'd like to do a webinar with you, or maybe I'd like you just to do my PowerPoint slides. I pick and choose. And so it helps to know what is it that you really want and need. So I think that's a tip that I wish I knew when I first started. Also do some dating before you get married, do some short-term work. A lot of times they'll want to commit you to a 6-month contract, and that's not feasible. So, let's work for a trial period a month. Let's get together again and we'll go from there. So, I realize everybody has to make money, but we're authors too. We don't have unlimited pocketbooks. So I wondered if anybody had any comments on that. Feel free to write those in there about any of your experiences bringing outside consultants. It's very important to know what your purpose is, and to get and talk to other people they've worked with, to spend the time to do that, because it can be incredibly helpful. And I just want to say one thing. My speaking, part of why I've gotten better, in my opinion, if you were to hear me speak 10 years ago, is because at intermittent periods, I've hired individual speech coaches to work with me on certain aspects of that. Anyway, sorry, Lisa, you want to say something?
Great. Yeah, a couple questions on the hiring outside folks. Mara asked, I just rebranded my company and hired a social media marketing company, and investing in those services have changed everything for the better for my company. Not a question, but just an endorsement of all that. And then a question
Before you go
for
on,
you.
I wonder, go on.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask Mara if she could type in or say what specifically she would advise, was most helpful to her, because we need to look at the positives. I don't want to come off here as, naysaying.
Absolutely.
Or if you want to put that in the chat, or just say what did you find so useful? And then you had another question as well.
Yeah, as she's doing that, maybe you can comment on this question, which is, how do you measure results when you hire an outside firm?
What I do is we agree in the beginning what our criteria are. And it's very difficult. Like, I've never really gotten clear about PR. We'll talk about hits in certain types of journals that we're interested in, and we'll look at the numbers, like quantifying it like that. With social media, we used, and I've had some real success lately in doing specific actions and then saying, here's what we're trying to do in terms of increasing the audience. Again, going back to Google Analytics and actually seeing that all of those numbers have gone up. So it's very rewarding to know that you're putting effort into focused work and getting results. But that's a great question. Did somebody just say something?
Yeah, we have a number of questions out here. I want to just pause and see, Maura, are you on? Here she says, the companies gave me the expertise of what would work and why. So that's terrific. Knowing that,
yes, Maura,
hugely valuable.
Teach us how to fish, right? And I've done that too. Show me how to do this, and then I can do it probably for cheaper, you know, and also learn it and make it part of what I do and bring in my team to do that. Yeah. You had some other, I'm glad
Absolutely.
we're having questions.
Howard,
that's great. That's great.
Oh, there's quite a few. It's wonderful. Howard adds to that and says, consider combining with others to use outsider services to see how you can leverage that.
Yeah, I'd love to know how he's done that. That would be great if you could put that in the chat, maybe. You know,
a great tip. Ed asks, Ed asks about TED Talks or TEDx Talks. What's the value of that, and do you have tips in how to do so?
Okay, I feel mixed about it. I did it, and it was really helpful to me. In fact, if you look on my homepage, I believe I have, or it's somewhere on there close by, my TEDx talk. If you're willing to, I think, first of all, here's the positive. We all have messages, I said before, that are unique and counterintuitive, so we could riff off of that, possibly. If you can tie it into your book, number one. Number two, know that to be really good in doing a TED Talk, it is an incredible investment of time. It's fine to do, just to know going in, to do it well, because you don't want to do a TED Talk that's mediocre. You know, you might get accepted, but you want to be your absolute very best. I worked to prepare for my TEDx talk, and it was an incredible amount. I'm really glad I did it, but it is a lot of big investments. So you have to decide, is that worth it? The third thing is, many people are saying that TED Talks are now, or TEDx is more of a commodity. It doesn't have the panache that it did. I would push back a little on that and say, if you get some great footage from that, and you can say you've been a TEDx speaker, that could be a real positive. But Ed, it really does depend on your goals. You know, what are you trying to get out? If you want to get that new idea out there, go for it. I'd be happy to talk to you further about that, because I know you might have some questions.
Great. That was from Ed, so the two of you can connect on that.
Ed
Wendy
is full
had a
of
question that she sent.
He's a journalist, of course.
Yes,
good.
And you got a big thanks with an exclamation part. Wendy sent a question several moments ago that I wanted to save because I think it's relevant to overall the theme here, Jennifer, which is, she says, with my first book, I happily had everything aligned and a strong brand. From the book, years of deep experience, company name, excuse me, articles, speaking, and more. The challenge for me now is the second book, which is a related but different topic. The former company name no longer works. The second book is actually doing better. It's a bestseller from ATD, but she finds that leaning in on both books, she finds that in leaning on both books, the brand is not as distinctive. What thoughts do you have?
I would love to hear what other people say on that as well, but I think, Wendy, you probably have to make a decision that when I talked about you're picking a lane, it will, if it's murky to you, then it's going to be murky to your audiences. So I would decide which is the one now that you're most excited about getting out there, which is the one that's the new message, you know? And then you can always use your other work, which is fantastic. I love your first book, you know, as I talked about before, as that's your sort of backbench that you can bring in, you know. But I would lead with the book that's doing well and that you already have the platform of ATD. So I would talk with you further about sort of how you're going to leverage that, because you got such credibility from that. So I hope that's useful.
And there were two others on the call who had thoughts for you, Wendy. One suggested that you talk to Marsha Reynolds, who also had to grapple with that issue, and that was Jesse who suggested that.
Right.
And Howard suggests that you go with 2 brands and 2 websites. He says that that's what he's doing as well. So that might be helpful.
Yeah, some people do that.
Additional data points.
Yeah, some people do that. For me, it'd be a little schizophrenic, but I think, but people do that successfully. So yeah, I would talk with Howard. What's Howard's last name? Is that Howard?
Prager.
No? Oh, okay.
Prager.
Great, Howard. Super. Well, now
Wonderful.
we know. See, this is about building a community and connection and ideas and suggestions.
Jennifer, I'm curious what in terms of daily or weekly habits, you mentioned looking at a feed of Google Alerts, but any other daily or regular habits that you think are essential in building this sustainable brand around your book?
I'm a very curious person, so I'm a news junkie, so I listen to tons of podcasts throughout the day. So, and I think what's useful to me too is bringing in information from not just from my field. So I'm very interested in tech. So, you know, that's my audience, but it's also, I've always been interested in tech. So I listen to Kara Swisher, I listen to Reid Hoffman. You know, in fact, I reached out to Reid Hoffman, and I'm thrilled to say yesterday he finally told me he's going to endorse my book. The only reason I'm saying that is because I was so passionate about his stuff, I really knew it, and I pitched it to him. So I always am looking for opportunities. The other thing that I think related to that I do is I look around corners a lot. And I do that by, again, listening to the news, by talking to people, and taking in a lot of information. I really do. I probably a little overwhelming sometimes. But as far as, and I also write, and I like to speak. Some of my friends know that. So I get into very stimulating conversations with probably a few times a week with my speaker friends. I'm very involved in my professional speaker group, and they're very bright people, and we challenge each other with new ideas. So it's a combination of reading, speaking, and writing when I force myself to do it, because it's not always easy to sit down and write, but I do it. So hope that helps. And by the way, I have a lot of fun too. The best part of my day is playing with my granddaughters, or my week, and you know, doing yoga. And that's when the ideas come. So I've learned that too, like the creativity and taking in information from different parts of my life, and art and music and all of those things have really made me, I think, a better writer and a better professional. And I think I just expanded my life so much more.
Great, thank you. Howard added, comment on everything you see posted on social media that relates. He says he does it all the time. And as you commented before, in terms of sharing articles, it highlights others' work and strengthens being seen as an expert. And then he asks if you're in PSI. I'm not sure what PSI is.
I'm not sure what that is either. It sounds familiar. I wanted to just say something too about, I talked about sustaining your brand, and that word that, you know, being a sustainable brand in terms of living on. And I think I just referred to it, just constantly staying on top of what opportunities are there. And, you know, and Ed knows I've talked about going to Silicon Valley, and I did a lot of the research for the new book in there, and just kind of saying what's happening now. Where are we seeing pockets of change? There was a woman named Marilyn Mobley who's passed away, who was a wonderful consultant and writer I knew here in Atlanta. And Marilyn always said, remain relevant. And that's sort of a catchword that I keep. So I feel like you need to go, you know, we need to expand our minds. We need to bring in fresh ideas, to be creative, as I mentioned. Don't just stick in, you know, linear way and, you know, in your topic, but bring in other ideas that really make your work so much more robust. So keep writing, speaking, evolving, and keep getting better at your craft. I love the term virtuoso. So for me, speaking and writing, I really work at that, you know, to be more knowledgeable. And you have to stay excited about it. Like, I think people will say, if they were describing me, you know, I am very enthusiastic. I get enthusiastic. And I got that from my dad, I think, who was a writer. And Dad wrote a lot of screenplays, and they were all about different topics, like that he would get into, and he would research them, you know, whether it was about prisons or different social activism or healthcare. He was always he got so enthusiastic, excited about things, you know, and they weren't always happy topics. But, you know, I always think about him when I'm engaging in some new learning. And I think if we keep learning, our clients and our customers, they pick up on that we're not a stay-at brand, that we keep evolving, if we use that term. So going back to what I said in the beginning, brand and personality are intertwined.
I love that. I love the emphasis really on curiosity, which is something I talk a lot about, as well as really that, not just a leadership trait, but a trait for good marketing and, you know, self-advocacy and all of those wonderful things. We have about 5 minutes left. There's another question that hasn't yet been answered, which is, what about Google ads? Do you see those as good for book marketing?
I have not used Google Ads. What people are now recommending that we do is Amazon ads. And I'm going to actually be doing that on my new book. So I don't know a whole lot about it. I wonder if anybody out there does, and feel free to do that. That apparently is making a difference, and Weaving Influence is doing that a lot for their books. And for those of you who aren't familiar, that's a firm run by Becky Robinson, who is just focused on book marketing. And that's one of the services they offer, is to help you with Amazon ads. And Kristen France should be the first point of contact, Kristen and her team at BK, to ask them about that, and they'll help you with it, because apparently it's making a difference. Google Ads I don't know about. So if anybody out there does, yeah.
So this is what I think we have time for one more question, and the question is from Sharon. Have you used your book name as a domain name?
As a domain name, yes, I save the domain names. Now, whether we're using them on, the website is jenniferkahnweiler.com. I use it as my name, but I always go to, whenever I have a new book, I always go there and save a domain. If that's what you're talking about with the GoDaddy or something, yeah, and saving them.
Yep.
Yeah. So Lisa, did you do that with your new book? Did you do your?
I just took a note to do it though, as
Okay,
soon as we get off the phone.
Good. I think we all have to do that. We all have to do that. But these are great.
100%.
So I just want to end with one sort of a kind of close the loop here about, sort of what can happen when we do promote our books and we spend the effort in our own way. You can't do all of these things, right? But do the strategies and the tactics that work for you right now that you think will have some payoffs. Maybe there's an area that you haven't tried yet. Maybe it's writing an article for media, or it's looking at your website and getting some feedback on that. But, to keep focusing in on what could you do to enhance your brand so that people know how great you are, so they get to read your book and they get to hear about your content. So 2 years ago, before ending my work for the night, an email popped into my inbox. And its author was a young woman named Jill Chang from Taiwan, who I learned was an introverted writer and a grant-making specialist. She was about to publish her first book about her journey as a quiet leader. And she wrote me, she said, "I'm writing this message to share with you that, inspired by your books and blogs, the first book about introverts in the workplace in the traditional Chinese market is going to be published finally," she wrote, "and luckily I'm the author." So right away I knew she had a good sense of humor. She said, "I'm stealing the chief editor's job and writing to you because you played such a crucial role in my own career development. And I'd like to take advantage of this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude." She went on to humbly ask for an endorsement, which of course I was happy to give her, even though I couldn't read the book. It wasn't yet translated into English. But I just knew from our initial contact that she was a fellow champion of introverts. And her book, Quiet is a Superpower: The Secret Strengths of Introverts in the Workplace, it went on to become a bestseller in Taiwan. She became a superstar where everybody recognizes her. She's a celebrity. And the final note on that, and the most exciting note, is that Bear Kohler is actually publishing her book in English. It's coming out in the fall of 2020. And she is one of us now, Jill Chang. So when our books get out in the world, we really can't predict, where those messages will land. So I want to encourage each one of you. You owe it to yourself and your book to build your brand. And it's been just an absolute pleasure to share with you today a little bit of my experience and learning, and to encourage each of you. So thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you all for a wonderful session.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I do have one announcement, so folks, before you pop off, just hang on for just a sec. But I can't even make my way through all of the accolades in the chat box, Jennifer. People really commenting what an inspiration, how helpful you were, lots of yays, lots of thank yous, lots of great reminders for us to be smarter about our resources, time, and money. So thank you so much for doing this. Before everybody goes, just a quick reminder, please, if you haven't registered for the marketing workshop on April 21st and 22nd in Princeton, New Jersey, go do that now. It is, as I said, April 21st and 22nd, Princeton, New Jersey. You can go to bkauthors.org and register now. And if you have questions about that, you can email Christelle at BK Authors, and she'll be happy to get back to you. Thank you so much again, Jennifer.
Been my pleasure.
We do have another another webinar. Christelle, can you throw that date in the chat real quick so I can let folks know? With Mark Levy is going to be doing our next webinar in March some point. And I don't see that date, but we'll get that out to everybody. And in the meantime, thank you all so much. Really appreciate you. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Crystal. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.